Today is Thursday, March the 13th. Hope you're having a great day. We're jumping into just talking about discussion questions based off the sermon. This last week, Adam, you talked about love plus time equals maturity. And you gave us some awesome next steps to really think through about how we can choose love versus choosing bitterness or choosing pride or choosing revenge, really, at the end of the day. So some questions you asked us to wrestle through. Here is one of them. What are some little details in your life that you might be overlooking? Thinking about a situation where you may have ignored a detail and how, if you paid attention to that, it may have changed the outcome.
Yeah, there are little details all over. Well, you know this about me a little bit. I am not always as great a listener as I wish I was. Yeah. Sometimes I listen to a point and then I start thinking about the next step or the plan or the response, and I can get out of that in just a little bit, right? This plays out at my house actually a lot. About and the way I love my wife and love things is that I hear things, but I don't hear the details of the things, and it messes up. Those little details matter a lot, right? Because those can change from a relationship that is productive and that is efficient and is good, whether it's with God, with neighbors, with spouse, with whoever. There's between an efficient and productive relationship and one that's frustrating to everybody around us, right?
Yeah. I think also just details, just thinking through, like, I don't always pay attention either. Part of that has to do with my ADHD. Part of it, I think, has to do... I don't think men pay attention to details just generically as often because we want to fix things, right? We get so fixated on listening that we miss details because we start thinking about solutions to fixing things. But, like, I think in my own life, like, situations that I overlook are just subtle places that I can infuse love into, right? You talk about this a lot, but, like, just bringing us to think about the places we go, whether it's Walmart or Aldi or Casey's or wherever, not being on my phone in those places so my eyes can see people, and I spend 30 seconds talking to the cashier eye to eye instead of trying to be on my phone or trying to do this. It's little things, right, that have dividends for the kingdom because I'm choosing to be present. I guess that's the biggest thing, is I miss out on little details, and the littlest detail is choosing to be present where I'm at.
Yeah, we've done a little bit of work. You and I have looking at personalities, and I don't know where you're at. Maybe you love personality surveys and types, and maybe you love it, maybe you hate it. Everybody seems to be love or hate, nowhere in the middle. But I love it. I think it's very beneficial to us. Doesn't matter what the personality survey is or the coding is. I think it's very beneficial to us to know these things. There are personalities. It is true that some people are future oriented, and some are past oriented, and some are present oriented, and the way we view time and relationships is based upon that orientation. I'm a future oriented person, and so when I'm talking to things, I'm always thinking about the next day, the next week, the next thing, my response to it, my next step, my action, your action, all these little things. Some people are past, and they think about what they've lost or what they missed or what they remember or what's there. But really, it's when we can learn to live in the present. The present is where we show love the most, because that's where people actually exist. Not the memories of people and not the potential of people, but the actual person. Yeah. And if we can learn to live in that present moment, that's where we really express love to people.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that actually segues great into the next question. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask it. What does it mean to spend your time in a way that practices love? What is one specific way you can choose to use your time to demonstrate love to someone in your life? Being present, right? And it doesn't mean ignoring people, because I think sometimes we feel that way. It's like, oh, my phone is going off and it's like, I'm talking to you, but it's my wife. I'm ignoring my wife. Well, no. Like, I mean, there's some situation awareness to that, being present for your spouse and being present for other people too. But I think sometimes, like you talk about, I'm also a future-oriented person.
You are.
So I have a problem where, okay, you're talking about this now, but what about 2 weeks from now? What about 4 years from now? I'm worrying about this thing 30 years from now. Do I need to be worrying about it? I don't know. And choosing to draw myself back, though, into the present, because that is where people are. That's where they are now. And being future-oriented is not bad. Being past-oriented is not bad. Being present-oriented, as long as we surrender those things to Jesus and choose to love the people right where they're at and work on healthy next steps towards things. But choosing to demonstrate, I think, especially as a forward-thinking, future-thinking person, my biggest way to show love is to pull myself back and to try to be more in the present.
Yeah, I mentioned in a message, well, not very long ago, one of the ideas was to be a generous talker, right? Just to be talking to people, and what I've discovered is that one of the best ways to be present in what's going on with somebody, or mindful of where it is just to talk to them in that moment, right? I wave at people and I smile and nod and stuff, but I try to speak words too, because speaking connects us to people.
Yeah.
It does. The advent of the telephone was massive because it allowed us to speak to people that we couldn't have spoken to otherwise, and this is huge. Just yesterday, I was talking on the phone with you. I was I was driving. You were driving. Actually, I didn't know this, but I was right behind you. You called me, and I was right behind you, and we didn't know that we were together. But so we were talking, then we went our separate ways, and then I actually went into a little gas station. I walked up in there. I was on the phone with you still, and the person who was there, the person that works there, I know them because I've been present in their life in that space. He wrote on a note. He just wrote this little thing out. And he held it up and it just says, "I have a question for you." Is all it says. I was like, "Oh, Keenan, I gotta go." It was time to be present in that spot, not distant with you at that moment, right? And so I got off there, and he had a question about something with his wife. He's looking at doing and some things. And I was able to help with that a little bit, to talk to him a little bit, just to listen and to give a little bit of advice and to point him in a direction. And those are present moments, right? This is so true. You have small children at home, or a baby and a elementary age child at home. And my kids are grown. All of my fosters have moved back to their families now. My son's in college in the dorm. We love when he comes back, but he doesn't come back as often as mom would like. But he comes back, and for you, being present at home looks different than me.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm in a season where my wife works a full day. I work a full day. She is super busy with some things. I'm busy with things, and we're running together. But sometimes we're running in two spots together, in the same direction. But we're present when we're home. I've learned a new rhythm. I get home and I pause, and I talk to her, and I listen to things. And I've joked on here before, maybe, about the dishing hour. I hear 2 glasses clink together, and I come running through the house. It's the dishing hour, and we do it together, right?
Yeah.
I'm present in moments like that. You're present with your family looks a little different because you have children, and it's a whole different kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, and because of that, my love, I'm learning to love differently in these seasons too, because everyone needs something different.
Yeah.
So for example, when you called me, my love for you you said, "I gotta go," and hung up. It wasn't just go, "Oh my goodness, he hung up on me. I'm no longer important." But to realize, because of my relationship with you, I know that you wouldn't do that unless there was a good reason.
Yeah. Well, when I called you back, you're like, "That was weird. What's up?"
Yeah.
So,
But I think sometimes love requires us to choose the best.
Yeah.
To choose to see the best in other people instead of defaulting to a place of hurt. And I think we live in a culture that automatically has taught us to default to hurt.
Yeah.
We default to bad assumptions about
Offense.
people, that like, you hung up on me, so therefore, why were you mad? Instead of, oh no, I ran into this, or this happens to me. I call my mom a lot on my way home, and between Carl Junction and Joplin, there's about 2 spots that randomly I lose my phone calls.
Yeah.
Lose all bars. And I call her back. My mom's like, "Oh, you hit that spot," right? It's not. My mom doesn't go, "You hate me," but in my own house, like, my wife and I tease about we have a debriefing. You call it the dishes hour. We have debriefing hours. And usually, like, we're going through the day, or we're talking, like, and she'll say, "Hey, this happened. Debrief tonight." Like, and it's like we schedule it for like that. It's important to hear those things. For my daughter, I debrief differently. I come home and I ask her about her school, and I ask her about, she's been writing stories and doing different things like that. So like last night, I was at a meeting later than normal and came home right at her bedtime. But before we went and did teeth brushing and those things, she was like, "Dad, I wrote a story. Can you add all my punctuations?" So I held her and we added punctuations to the thing. That's being present, right?
Yep, it is.
And with my son, it's doing random things, but as a 6-week-old, he just needs me to physically be present. But because I love people, I'm choosing to figure out the way that they need me to be present.
And the more I wrestle with what what the New Testament's talking, what Paul's talking about, and Peter, and as they take Jesus' command to make disciples, and then they write letters about it, and they teach how to do these things, the more I wrestle with that, the more I recognize that making disciples is parenting, spiritual parenting. And so the principles with your children at home, or my kids when they were home, the principles we use there of learning how each child needs us to be present and how these things work. These are the same principles we use to discover how each person needs us to be present when we're out there.
Yeah. And because love just shows it differently, learning what people need at different times. We have a family in our church. I'm not going to use names, but they were struggling with a kid, one of their kids. And we were getting ready to have dinner together, and they were worried about bringing this kid because they're like, man, we're just having a bad day with this person. I think maybe we just need to take him home tonight. It's like, no. Come on over. Put them in time in with me. And it's something I've actually learned from my wife and through foster care, that a lot of kids, they don't need timeouts, they need time ins. And I remember, like, you did that a lot with them. Your kids, I'd come into the office and one of them was sitting in a chair right next to you. Yep. Because you weren't trying to punish them from distancing yourself, but recognizing that maybe you need more time with me, but there is also a consequence that you're not going to have fun doing it all the time, but I'm not distancing you from me. But again, everybody has different things. So for those of you out there who are not future-oriented thinking, maybe you're a past thinker, or maybe you are a present thinker, maybe the way that you show love, especially for those who, if you're married to people who are future-oriented or you're friends with them, try to spend some time in the future. That's the love language of future-oriented people. Yep. Like, hey, dream with me on this. And like, if you walked into my office, like, hey, I want to talk, I'm thinking about doing this. Can you dream with me about this? That is my love language. Like, you just set off my creativity. I'm like, oh, you could do this, or this, or this, or this. I love that. But I think this goes back to being others-centered. Is spending time knowing how others feel and act and think and do, and choosing to surrender my want for that person, because if they're doing the same thing, then we're both being filled. Sure. So I hope that is helpful to you, and I hope that you've learned today as you process things like something I'm just trying to live my life by more is not that God wants me to do big things, but God just wants me. And because God wants me, I need to live by what Paul called the law of love. What does love require of me? Because if God is love, which we see that throughout the Old Testament and New Testament, and we know who he is, that he is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, then I need to start asking myself in all these situations, when this happens, what does love require of me? Yeah. When this happens, what does love require of me? When this happens, and then just think through everything through the lens and law of love. Instead of through selfishness, instead of through my own wants and desires, but through the law of, well, how would God use this moment? I heard someone say one time that if you grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, remember the "What Would Jesus Do" bracelets? Yeah. I had bajillions of those. I collected those things as a kid. But one of the things that they said was they feel like they got it wrong. Because now they realize, like, I don't want to think about what would Jesus do. I want to instead think about what did Jesus do. Yeah. Maybe that's what you need to start doing. Maybe you need to spend more time in God's Word so you know when these situations happen, I respond like this because that's how Jesus responded. That is what love requires of me. Yeah. So I hope that helps you take next steps. Adam, why don't you share a little bit about, we're still in the Kingdom Calculations series for a couple more weeks. We're going into spring break, so some people might be traveling, but we'd still love for them to connect with us. So tell them a little bit about the weekend and where we're going.
Yeah, so if you are traveling, I think our live stream is getting back on track again, right?
Yes, it was off for a while. We had some major malfunctions, but we fixed some things, so thank you for bearing with us.
It just broke, and then getting it back together, it took a little time, so it's back going again, I think strong again. So there's that. This weekend, Kingdom Calculations in Matthew 18. In Matthew 18, that's the chapter, if you're familiar with it, where Jesus tells people, if someone has something against you, take a witness, take someone else with you, go do this whole thing. After that, they start talking about forgiveness. How do we forgive? How often? And how does that work? And I'm actually I don't do this super often, but I'm reaching back a little bit in history, and I'm going to pull out a thought from a sermon we shared a few years ago, and I'm going to kind of rework that. And God's been speaking to me about it a lot, about just the way we create routines in this and forgiving. So it's going to be really good. I'm looking forward to this.
So join us this weekend, Saturday. If you haven't traveled yet, you can join. Like if you're leaving Sunday, come to our North Heights campus on Saturday night. Hang out with us at 6 o'clock, or you can join us Sunday at 8, 9:30, or 11. On demand at 9:30 or later on as you're traveling and stuff. But please spend time, especially if you are watching and you're listening and you have family, like especially kids and young adults in your household and you're traveling. If you're traveling, play the sermon. And here's the reason why. I want you to show for your family, patterns for your family, rhythms for your family, that even though we're traveling, this is important to us. Because that is what your kids, they're not necessarily going to remember everything Adam and I say. What they're going to remember is, even on road trips, mom and dad thought Jesus stuff was important. So model that for them. Take time to do that together as a family. Church, until we see each other again, you are sent. Have a great day.